Welcome back to What the Fertility Season 2. This morning we are sitting down with Elise, single gal to mama on Instagram. So Elise was single mother, is single mother by choice to her beautiful son, Artie. And we are so excited to hear your story and really all of the bumps that were extremely unexpected once you started what you thought was pretty seamless journey into mamahood. So welcome, Elise. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was one of those weird things where I got a whole bunch of fertility problems added and acronyms joined. But yeah, I started my single motherhood journey back in 2020. I actually got pregnant naturally in October of 2019 and miscarried shortly after. And I was already 31 or 32 at the time. And I thought, God doesn't want me to have a child. Like, I shouldn't be a mom. Great. We can just close that chapter and be done. And then fast forward to July 2020, I got pregnant again and miscarried again, but much later this time. And that kind of jolted me to think, nope, you know what? I should be a mom, actually. And so while I was actively miscarrying, I scheduled an appointment with the fertility clinic. And when I told them I want to be a single mom by choice, surely there's a way to do that. What do I need to do? And they weren't very busy, and they had me in like 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow. Amazing. That is wild. I don't want to interrupt you, but let me back up a little bit. So I actually met Elise through my husband because we were like, 2020, whenever the times overlapped, Elise was literally giving herself shots at the gym, like right before she would go do this workout. And my husband would come home and be like, yeah, there's another girl doing IVF. And she just brings her shots into the gym. And I was like, I swear to God, if you tell me to go to the gym while I'm doing this, I'm going to kill you. So Elise was like this mysterious woman of like IVF. And that's how I actually met her. So I didn't know that initial story.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. It was funny. I had to get permission from the coaches to do IVF and be allowed to work out. So yeah, I would bring my cooler with my shots because they put me on human growth hormone and I had to do them every day at 7. And it didn't work. Like, I would have never made it home. And I was like, surely I can just bring the cooler. Like, could I put it, like, it feels weird telling the girls up front, like, hey, there's needles in my cooler. Can I put this in your like back room so no one accidentally takes it?
Yeah, I did not like you during the time, but
I did not like me either during that time. So because like you can totally work out when you're pregnant. I was like, no way. Absolutely not. But I wanted to continue while I was at least priming for IVF.
Yeah, but so sorry to interrupt, but I'm so sorry for both of your losses. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was I had a chemical pregnancy in 2019 and then I had a blighted ovum in 2020. Okay. So
you had like an inkling of an idea that, okay, maybe I may struggle a little bit even with IVF.
I thought maybe this is a little bit more challenging just because I've, TMI, but I've never used protection and was just lollygagging around and nothing ever happened. I was like, that's probably not a good thing, thinking about it. And then my sister struggled to conceive. So I was thinking, shoot, if this is, genetic, then that would not be good. She actually had a thyroid problem. So she lost her first 2 also, and one was also blighted ovum for her. And then she had an IUI and the first one took, and she scheduled the second one and accidentally got pregnant the month before. And then the third was a complete accident. And I was like, great, look at how easy it is. You just have one IUI, boom.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm like, IUI sounds great. Like, let's do that. Yeah, no. That's like not.
So you went to the fertility clinic, you were actively miscarrying for that second one. And you said that was early 2021?
Late 2020.
Okay. Okay.
I had my first appointment either in August of 21 or 20 or September of 2020. And
were they pretty receptive to this single mother by choice thing? Like, or how did that conversation? Yeah.
It's still the South. So it's a little bit touchy, which I figured out because not all of the nurses are receptive. The doctor didn't care. He loved it. But not all of the nurses were helpful, still referring to my husband needing to come in for his sperm analysis. And I was like, I don't have one of those. And actually went back a couple of weeks ago and they still are saying it. So.
Oh, wow. And where are you originally from?
Me, I'm from Europe.
I know. I told Amanda, I said, I'm pretty sure she's from, I was going to say like Denmark or Amsterdam. What is it?
Holland. Amsterdam.
Okay, cool. So you're like, it's separate here.
Definitely different culture and different like mindset than like the Southern American.
Yes. And I've lived for long enough to know that it wasn't going to be receptive, but I'm also here to break those, preconceived notions that people have that you can't do it by.
Yeah, for sure.
Is this person absolutely loved it and done this with someone else, but it wasn't an option given. So sometimes you have to make the most of it.
Oh gosh, I love that. And your son is so adorable, but okay, let's back up. Okay, so you start this journey and did they say, so I didn't even think about this, and Amanda can probably relate in terms of donor. So you had to immediately start the donor sperm process.
So I had my first appointment. They did just some blood work and I had a chat with the doctor who basically schooled me about my own body. I really felt like I was in just like a lesson about how your body works. And I was like, I feel very in over my head here, very in my head. But yeah, scheduling, all the tests, the blood work, the follicle count, all of that. And then my nurse gave me just a book and she's like, this is the sperm bank we use. Here are some featured donors. If you see any that you like, you can sign up for an account, and it pretty much is like Tinder. You can swipe donors and you get a fairly good amount of information. You get a couple of baby pictures, their donor name, I guess, their birthday, what their parents do, brothers, sisters, like family medical history. You can get really nitpicky if you want to. But do I care that the donor's second cousin twice removed had acne as a kid? Probably not.
I love that so much.
What you were looking for specifics though, right? I remember you.
Yeah, I have only ever dated the same type of guy. And that's who I think I would end up with if I do get lucky enough to have a husband. So I wanted someone that looked like that. So tall, dark hair, and blue eyes.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So, you were tall, blonde, and green eyes?
Blue eyes.
Blue eyes.
So
I can't.
Gonna have blue eyes. And then hair-wise, Artie looks nothing like the donor. He's got
just
thick,
like
gray,
you.
dark brown hair, and Artie's got a mop of curly blonde hair.
Oh my, that is hilarious.
Yeah, it's so funny. He is in the 96th percentile, so he does take after the donor with that. But yeah, I ordered 4 vials initially, and I think I should have had an inkling there that I didn't think it was going to be easy, because why would you buy 4? You could have just bought 1 and thought it's going to be one and done. Like, of course it's going to be one and done. So yeah, I went through all the testing. They did the HSG, which I was like, I will never do that again. That was not fun. And then I had a sperm picking party with one of my friends. She came over, we had margaritas and
oh my gosh, wait, I love that so much.
Yeah.
That is so fun. I mean, you got to make it like, interesting and fun about it. It's a hard process in itself.
Like, I'm picking the other half of my child's genetics.
Yeah.
What?
You definitely need a drink doing that.
100%.
And there was one in the magazine and I was like, that's it. It's him. For sure it's him. And then I went and looked and he didn't have any vials available. I'm like, no, shoot. And so I tabled him and tried to find some others, but you have to go through genetic testing to make sure that you and the donor aren't carriers for the same thing. So I was kind of, still looking for him. And then I called and they had vials available.
Wow.
So why ended up being the one that you originally wanted?
It was the one that I originally wanted.
I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so we did IUI number 1, I think in September or October of 2020. And I started testing at 4 days post IUI because I was like, surely this line's going to show up any minute. No, very much negative. And I was like, shoot, really? And I'm more of the aggressive route. Like, let's start meds. Let's not like, why are we waiting for my body to figure it out? Just like, I'm wasting more than $1,000 every single vial that you're just putting up there. Can we make sure it works? Because
okay. So per vial, is that like per IUI or per IVF?
So for IVF, they cut it in half, which is amazing. But for IUI
or ICSI, I say ICSI
yep.
or whatever. Yeah, because they can hand pick them.
Yep. Which is wild to think about. I gave them like 13 million and they picked one, and that was $1,000. And I'm like, golly, that stinks. But yeah, they at least cut it in half for IVF. But for IUI, they just thaw it out, and then just use, the isn't even that much, but they use the full amount per IUI. So
okay, so you did one IUI that failed. Did you do the other two?
And then I did another one and another one. I actually ended up doing 4 IUIs, and my body was hating it. And it was starting to ovulate sooner and sooner into my cycle, as early as cycle day 5. And so I had 2 missed cycles because I started to ovulate early, and they were like, hey, that is a warning sign of menopause. And I was like, what? No, that's not good.
Opposite of what I want.
Yeah, literally, I don't want that. And we figured out that it's my body just reacting to the gonal that they put me on. It just like got a little bit overzealous and was like, woohoo, let's ovulate. So I ended up trying IUI number 4 with a different donor, because that was my last vial of him. And I didn't want it, just in case I needed IVF, I wanted to keep my 1 vial of him left. So I randomly picked someone else and still failed. And I was like, okay, so it's not the donor. Because you could just not be compatible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then it was time to move on to IVF. And the clinic here is $15,000, and I did not have that. So I switched clinics to CNY in New York, and that was in February of 2021. And I prepped for my first round. It's really difficult there because they do cookie cutter IVF. They kind of put everyone on the same plan, the same amount of meds. And that's great. And it works for probably 90% of the people, but the other 10, it does not work for, which, come to find out, fall on the wrong side of that statistic.
Oh, no. So I was going to ask, okay, so you've done these 4 IUIs, you go to is CNY, right? Yeah. So at this point, had you been quote unquote diagnosed with any type of infertility?
I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which, great. Like, that does nothing. And then my AMH was low enough that they added diminished ovarian reserve to that. And then I had my OB. Love that man. I would just go and say, hey, could you run this list of things? And he did. He ran every blood test that I asked him to do that were wild and so out there. But figured out a lot. But yeah, round 1, just fail. It was terrible. There's no local monitoring clinics here. So I had to drive 3 hours to Charlotte to be monitored. So I would leave in the morning for 6 a.m. ultrasound, 8 a.m. blood work, and then I would work on the way home, and then I would go to work those days. And it was really difficult because you're obviously not telling people that you're trying to do this, especially as a single mom. People are judgy, and it's not very common yet, or at least people don't really talk about it. So that was pretty difficult. And then, I had 15 follicles, I think, that were measuring good enough to be retrieved. And so amazing. I drove 16 hours to New York.
Oh my God.
I had to bring my dog with me.
Oh my God.
No one really knew her. So in was March at this point, March 2021. Drove 16 hours, brutal. Stayed in a hotel, and then I had my retrieval, I think, the following day, and they got 7 eggs. And I was like, 7? What happened to my 15 beautiful follicles that we saw? And they were like, they were empty. And I was like, empty? That can't be good. And then I got the call the next day that only 2 were mature.
Oh my God.
What? because everything you see online is all about the numbers and
the attrition
game and all of this. And I'm like, well, if I'm starting with 2, I'm going to have 0 left by the end of this, because from what I've seen, other people start with 40 and they have 2. So like, how am I going to end up with anything to transfer? Luckily, they let some of them grow overnight. And so I ended up with 5 embryos or 5 eggs that they fertilized, all of them fertilized, which was amazing. And I ended up with 3 day 3 embryos. They were all terrible quality. I think they were all poor, which is the lowest scale that CNY has. And so I chose to transfer 2 back during a fresh transfer on day 3. And so had my fries, drove my 16 hours back home.
After your retrieval, you then, I can't even imagine that.
Days after my retrieval. And I started PIO also. That was fun.
What is that?
The progesterone and oil shots.
Oh, duh.
Yeah, those were fun. Oh, I have a live on my Instagram where I do the first one because I was freaking out in the hotel room.
Okay, let's pause right there. So, okay, your Instagram, single gal, GAL, to mama.
Yeah.
So we'll link that on the show notes, but that's awesome. Just you have 2 Instagrams, obviously your personal, but this is completely dedicated to the lifestyle, the pre-planning, all that stuff, to get to your son, which is so cool. But I just hear you even sharing this story, and like, there has to be such a whole other component of even just IVF and infertility when you don't have that support system.
Yeah. And it's weird. I think most single moms obviously don't expect to have fertility issues. And so many of us are thrown into the infertility world where we kind of feel like we don't belong because, you know, it's not what we set out to do necessarily, but does anyone, you know? But we just think we're missing sperm. That's it, right? Like the rest should be easy.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not for everyone. And sure, some, you know, do ICI at home and get pregnant. You're like, what? And then there's some that need 9-10 rounds of IVF and, you know, it still doesn't work. So it's just a crapshoot for everyone, it seems like. But yeah, my tests were positive once I got home, and then they were not. They just slowly faded back to stark white. And I was like, come on. And so for round 2, I decided we were going to do the kitchen sink because I was going to throw everything I had at that second round. So I could say, I've done everything. I tried my best. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And then
Sorry, Elise. At this point, are you out of the sperm that you picked originally? Like, did you use that last vial or you? Oh, because it went in half. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Which I didn't know. So I was mourning the fact that, you know, I lost my donor because he wasn't donating anymore. And I think he had a 2-year wait at that point. And I'm like, oh no, well, you know, can you cut the half in half? So I have even more. I'm just going to pick one out. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, like one single one. It's still weird to think about. But yeah, so I still had that half at the clinic, but I was going to do the kitchen sink. And then if that didn't work, I was going to move to embryo donation or adoption, because maybe my own eggs just aren't good enough, which is fair and it's fine. But yeah, I literally did everything I could. I read the book. It starts with the egg front to back. I've never taken so many supplements in my entire life. I think it was up to like 25 different things at the time. And I started working out really diligently. I did gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, caffeine-free. I was having no fun.
You're not kidding about the kitchen sink, from diet to exercise to supplements to lifestyle.
I was researching everything. Why are my eggs empty or my follicles empty? Why, you know, I stimmed for so long and nothing was happening. Do we maybe need to switch medications? What else can I be doing? You know, why are they not implanting, or they're starting, but then they're not growing further? Like, what is happening? And so that's when my OB ran all my blood work and we found out my natural killer cells were high. And I was like, of course, my body
I was going to say, that's why you and I connected, because that's where I was at in my journey. And I was going to, when I heard you talk, I was like, didn't you do intralipids?
Yep. For 14 weeks.
Okay, we got to talk about all of this. Okay, so hold on. Let's go back. This is why you and I like connected so quickly, because I was at that like reproductive immunology as well after recurrent loss and like no answer. And I just hear you like you're such an advocate for yourself, because like you're seeing all these doctors, and CNY is incredible, top notch, but like they're not giving you these answers, nor are they even like looking into it for you. So you just like have to, in order to like even know what to ask them for. Otherwise, to your point, they're just going to cookie cutter it, and you could just be doing the same thing every time.
And you have to really advocate for yourself. I've never had to do that before in my life. I'm not an outspoken person. I will probably not tell you what I'm really thinking. I'm just quiet in the corner, but nope, not then. I made a really big stink. And I got my own personal nurse assigned to me for my second round at CNY. And she's amazing. I email her probably every quarter or something with a little update of Artie, and remind her that if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't be there. Because everything that, Google searches came up with, I would present to her and say, hi, what do you think about these 15 things? And she was like, okay, why don't we do this, this, and this? And I was like, okay, great. Like, this is like a good balance between me just randomly Googling stuff. I don't know how this stuff works. No one really.
So what was the time frame from the your first IVF cycle where you miscarried to where you did the next transfer? Because it sounds like, I think a lot of people might be like, okay, that's a lot of like lifestyle change, supplement change. How long did that take?
3 months.
That's okay. The 90 days.
Yep. The 90 days. I was like, we have 90 days. Like, let's get it. Like, what can we do in 90 days? And yeah, I tried everything. We were positive thinking. We were meditating. I was doing yoga, acupuncture, whatever Google said, I was doing it.
The true definition of the kitchen sink.
Yes. And it felt bizarre to do it. But at the same time, I knew in my heart that I truly was doing everything I could. And there was nothing more that I felt like. I didn't want to leave that round and say, well, I wish I would have tried whatever, because there wasn't anything left for me to try. So when it came time, I primed with the human growth hormone for 3 months. And yeah, we tried a whole different protocol. We threw Menopur in there instead of the low dose HCG. My body responded much better to that. And I went back to Charlotte to have monitoring. So that was fun. Still the 3-hour drive one way, just for 6 a.m. ultrasound and 1 vial of blood. It was a lot. I ended up stimming for 11 days, I think. We did higher doses. I started Cetrotide really early because my body just loves to ovulate on its own. So I started Cetrotide, I think, day 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of my stims. I also day 2 of my cycle. I was going to
say, and just for people listening, that basically holds your body from releasing any eggs that you are. So it's almost like the antagonist to all the meds you were doing to stim.
Right. It's trying to prevent you from ovulating on your own. And I wanted to try a double trigger with Lupron and what's the other one?
I think it's HCG, right, Amanda?
That's why your pregnancy test is positive after you do a trigger.
Yeah.
But I was priming with Lupron, so then you can't also trigger with it. So I was like, okay, fine. But that was one of the things I researched of empty follicles, is like a Lupron trigger would help. But my nurse and I discussed that Lupron during stims would be more beneficial for me than to do with the trigger. So I was like, okay, it's fine. And then, yeah, we did interlipids, which is standard at CNY. I just did them for longer, but you do your first one right after your retrieval.
Can you talk about that for listeners? Because it's big in the recurrent loss community.
Yes, and it is wild. It is this white milky stuff. It's egg whites, and sometimes it's fish, because I couldn't get egg whites, and so we had to use fish lipids. But it basically helps stop your immune system from overreacting. And so it's hoping to prevent your body from attacking the embryo that you just put back.
And can you talk about it's natural killer cells and how that aligns with natural killer cells and intralipids. And again, that's like when you're diagnosed with unexplained recurrent loss, that's pretty much like the catch-all at the bottom, is that you have high natural killer cells, which attack the foreign body, which is, you know, the fetus. And a lot of just standard reproductive endocrinologists don't agree with it. And they say it's wild, it's not true. Natural killer cells are actually beneficial for pregnancy. So you get a lot of pushback in places like CNY, Clinic. That's where like a lot of us end up going to, because they really support it and really they have data and they've seen results. You're a perfect example, but I guess
and
I don't know what
spooky when you first start, especially when you come from like a more standard clinic. Before that, like my IUIs were completely different. So it was the whole clinic. I don't think they would have ever recommended acupuncture, you know, but CNY was like acupuncture every day.
CNY, don't they have like, I know some clinics, Amanda, I think maybe yours did. Don't they a lot have like acupuncture, like literally in the same building as the clinic?
Yeah, that's how mine was for in Michigan when we went for our embryo transfer. I literally would go right before the transfer, and then I went right after the transfer, and they were like, "Yep, okay, go right there now."
That's amazing.
I had acupuncture before and after my transfer on the same bed that they did the transfer at CNY.
Oh, that's cool. Mine was not like that. That's really
That is cool.
They just like come in and do it. But where'd I leave off?
I think I asked a question and then answered it myself.
Oh, so. But yeah, I had killer cells because once it implants, it recognizes it as foreign, which is why they implant and we get those positive tests and we're like, yay. And then your body's like, whoa, no, we don't know what this is. Bye. And it
actually can get worse. The more miscarriages you have, the faster. And again, this is all crazy science that's out there that's not proven, but the theory is that the more times the NK cells attack the foreign body, they'll recognize it faster each time. And so then you start to have chemical pregnancies. If maybe you've, carried 13, 14 weeks, well, now all of a sudden you're just having these chemical pregnancies because your body's attacking. They think they're helping you faster.
Right. Yeah. Which is great for other things, like the cold or whatever daycare crud you get, but it doesn't seem to be working for that. It only works for pregnancies. But yes, so I did intralipids when I got to New York. So we did the retrieval and I had 15 follicles again. I was like, great. They were looking perfect. And we got 7 eggs again. And I was like, what?
Same number. Oh gosh. Yeah.
So then I get the call, 3 are mature. And I was like, you're joking. This is like, I prepped for 3 months to make sure that this did not happen. Mm-hmm. And here again. And so of the 3, 2 fertilized, and my plan, which is hilarious because I don't know why we make any plans when we do infertility, but my plan was to grow them all to day 5, all of them, which I didn't have any. But I was going to grow them all to day 5 and do genetic testing. Hilarious. That did not end up happening. So my 2 grew to day 3. And I chose to transfer them back at that time. I felt like they should go back to where they came from. I actually had them thaw my 1 remaining embryo from the first round also. And I got special permission to put 3 embryos back, which looking back, having 1, I would not do that again.
You're like, oh my gosh, things all like take.
I just noticed you say this verbiage, like transfer them back. And I love that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, you put them back where they belong.
I love that.
I can. That's where they're supposed to be. And that's where they're thriving. Mine were never going to make it to day 5 if we push them in the lab, because that's not where they were supposed to be. So we put 3 back. We'll not do that again. I am a firm believer now and just do 1. But I was thinking, what's the worst that happens? I have triplets. Great. After all this time trying to have a baby, if that is the worst thing that happens, then that is going to be fine. No. Now that I have 1. So yeah, we put them all back. Once again, drove 16 hours back home. Hurricane Elsa was like barreling down on the East Coast as I was driving back.
And you're just by yourself. Well, you have your dog, right?
I have my dog. And I did actually have a coworker with me because I wanted Valium for my transfer. So I had to have someone there with me. So we drove back. Got back right in time to just be pummeled by Hurricane Elsa. And I didn't test. I just let it be. I knew that there was nothing I could do. Testing early wasn't going to make a difference. And I was going to just go on pretending it worked because I had no proof that it didn't.
Right. Yeah.
And I transferred on a Tuesday, and Saturday I was in the ER with, I could not keep any food down. And I was like, oh no, I think I have OHSS. And that's what the doctors thought too, but they ran my beta and I was already pregnant at the time.
Wow.
Which they didn't tell me. I just saw it in my records like a month later.
They didn't tell you?
They didn't tell you.
Nope. Because I told them I had just had a transfer and I did do the trigger. So it should have been positive. And also I forgot to mention, so my new protocol was, I did an HCG wash before my transfer. Then I did HCG booster shots after my transfer. So we're tricking my body into thinking it's pregnant to hopefully hold on to the embryos long enough that it can take over by itself. So regardless if I had peed on a test, it would have been positive. There would have been no way for me to tell if it was a baby, multiple babies, or just the booster.
Gotcha.
So it was easier mentally because
for sure. Yeah, that
really
makes sense.
And then we added Neupogen, which is another one I found on Google. It's the most expensive drug I have ever been on. But it's also said to help with natural killer cells. What it does is it skyrockets your white blood cell count, which if you don't tell people that in the emergency room, they will freak out.
I think you have like cancer, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oncology, because my like white blood cell count was off the charts. And I was like, oh, no, I'm on Neupogen. Like that's supposed to happen. They're like, why? Because it's not the normal use for it.
Exactly.
And I was like, well, it's a funny story. They were like, we think you should be admitted. And I was like, I promise you I'm fine. I'm actually fine.
You're like, you need testing done.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm actually good. But yeah, we did an ultrasound and they could see like fluid filled, ovaries, which of course you're just coming off of a round of IVF. Like your ovaries are going to be a little bit not very happy. And they just told me to, lay low and it should pass. I got Zofran prescribed at 3 weeks pregnant. So that was great. And yeah, then we did intralipids. So I was going to go to my OB because obviously I can't go to CNY every week. I was going to go to my OB, but there's a special valve that intralipids need and the OB didn't have it. And so they started calling around and I actually went to the cancer center every single week for my intralipid infusions every week.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How is it? So it's an infusion.
Yep.
Got it.
Okay. So I let them practice. I was like, whatever vein you want to pick, go right ahead. And I would sit there. They would bring me snacks. They were the loveliest people. I've gone back and introduced them to Artie because we did a little gender reveal there for them. And they were free. Yeah. And then when I was 7 weeks, I decided to move to a different state.
Pause, hold on. When you were 7 weeks, did you know you were 7 weeks?
Yeah. So I got my beta July 19th, which was the due date of my first miscarriage. Oh. And they sent a little rainbow down instead. And I just hoped for a beta that was high enough that we would know it wasn't the boosters. And my initial beta was 243. And I was like, yes, that's definitely not the boosters because they make it, I think, 10 to 15 or something. And so, yeah, I called my mom. So incoherent. I don't even think she knew if it was good news or bad news because I was making no sense. And she was screaming and crying. And that's when I took a pregnancy test. And that's the only one I took. I took one. I don't know how I did that, but yeah, just girl who started testing 4 days post IUI to not testing at all. So yeah, and then I am the also low statistic of betas not doubling. I know there's such a push for like it's only a viable pregnancy if your betas double, and I'm in everyone's comment like not the case, not the case, not the case. Doesn't have to be like that. Like don't be like me and absolutely freak out when they don't double. Mine didn't even. come close to doubling. It went from 243 to 366 to 561.
Wow.
And I'm freaking out to my nurse at CNY, obviously. And she's like, breathe. It's going up appropriately. And I was like, really, this is appropriate? Everyone online is saying, it needs to double. And she's like, it's false. As long as it goes up by like 30%, it's fine. And I was like, okay. So then I go back one more time for my final beta. And, I check my little LabCorp portal and it says 0. Cue, like, I've never freaked out quite like that before. And I called my nurse, carrying my beta 0. And she was like, oh, LabCorp probably gave you the wrong person's results. And I was like, what? Because someone else is thinking they're very pregnant when they're not. And I'm thinking how traumatic to do that to someone who's had losses before, to send them a beta of 0.
Lost.
And someone else they sent a positive beta result to. So not the best thing to have happened. And they were like, we want you to go back one more time. And I was like, honestly, I'm a little traumatized. I don't know if I really want to go back. And my nurse promised I would get the right results. And I was like, okay, if you promise. And it was 19,000. And I was like, okay, now we can breathe. Now we're good.
Yeah.
That's
and so
insane.
It was so traumatizing. And I was on like a family vacation, like finally telling my sister and her kids that I'm pregnant, and then it's 0. And I'm like, oh, really? Again? But no, at 5 weeks and 5 days, he was a little tiny yolk sac. And I was like, so not a blighted ovum? And they were like, nope, there's something in there. And I was like, okay. And they said, we'll see you back at 7 weeks. And I was like, oh, really? Can I come like sooner than that?
Right.
Like, please. Because I'm used to being at a fertility clinic where they, do an ultrasound every single week and then you graduate, but I'm not anywhere near my fertility clinic. So I'm going to my OB who, doing an ultrasound at 5 weeks for them was already like, so rare.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, oh, come in when you're 8 weeks. No, absolutely not. Also, I put 3 back. So like, can we check to see how many there are?
I was going to say, were you like at this point, like, oh my, is it multiples or anything? Were you like?
Until I was like 30 something weeks pregnant. Like we're sure there's just one, right? Like there's not one hiding behind the other. There's just one. I'm like, no, okay. I can breathe a little bit. But yeah, at 7 weeks and 5 days, I think I saw his heartbeat for the first time. And I'm pretty sure I traumatized that entire waiting room because I screamed so loud, but I'd never seen a heartbeat.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And so we graduated from CNY at that time. And so after that ultrasound, I moved to Virginia to just be closer to family while I was pregnant. But I drove back 6 hours every time I had an appointment in Charleston because I knew I was going to deliver here. So that was fun. I had to find a different place in Virginia to do my interlipids.
You just didn't want it to be simple.
I just like, if there is a difficult path, put me there, because easy, not my course apparently. But yeah, I found like an immune place that did it there. And so I would go watch TV, do my little 30 minutes. They were not fans of what I was doing because my blood pressure would tank every time I got one of those IVs. It would be like 50 over 70.
Wow. Okay. So you said this earlier. So until you were about 14 weeks pregnant, you were doing intralipids. And is that, that's pretty recommended, right? Almost so you get out of the first trimester.
Yeah. Yep. And I misunderstood my nurse and I thought she said 40. And I was like, that is a long time to do these. And she was like,
a lot of money.
Yeah. Yes. And she was like, 14 is not that. I was like, are you saying 40 or 14? And she was like, 14. I'm like, oh, okay, that's better. And I was allowed to stop Neupogen at 10 weeks. And then the boosters I stopped at 8 weeks. And Neupogen is $325 for a vial that lasts you 5 days.
Wow.
So that's expensive. Brand that medication alone. And then I was told I could stop progesterone at 10 weeks, but it really freaked me out to trust my body enough to have the placenta do it. So I volunteered to do it for 2 weeks more.
That's what I did.
Yeah. an 1.5 inch needle, like, please sign me up to do more of these. So week 11, I did every other day. And then week 12, I did every 2 days. And then I just like kind of weaned myself off of it. And that it just felt better for me.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. And then found out he was a boy. Which is so wild. He had a different name until I was 28 weeks. And I was like, this is not the right name. I woke up at like 3, like, it's not the right name.
Oh my
It's
God.
not.
I love it.
Yeah. And everyone's like, well, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea.
This, but it's not this.
It's not that.
Oh.
So yeah, he is named after my dad and both of my grandpas. So I try to put 3 names and make it into 2. So that took a little bit of brain power, but I moved back. I think I was 30 weeks pregnant when I moved back. Highly don't recommend moving at 30 weeks pregnant. But yeah, moved back to Charleston. And at 32 weeks, I went into preterm labor. So right on time.
Oh my gosh. I didn't think I realized that either.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So what happened?
I thought my water broke. It did not. But I went to labor and delivery just to get checked out. And they were like, do you realize you're having very bad contractions? And I said, no. And they were like, well, we have to check and make sure it's not doing anything and not, actively dilating you. And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay. So they checked and they were like, nope, you're good. No dilation, not effaced at all. And so they sent me home and I couldn't sleep. I was in so much pain. And I went back the next day and I was 1 centimeter dilated. And they were like, oh no, like, you're dilating now. So I had to stay for 4 days, get steroid shots, talk to the NICU team, and kind of just prepare. And then he didn't come. The contraction stayed, and he didn't come. So I was sent back home after those 4 days and I had contractions for 40 days every 2 minutes and he didn't come.
Oh, wait, what?
Yep.
You're a freaking superhero. That's insane.
So I told my OB that I wanted a C-section. I was like, I don't even want to try. I'm so tired at this point. Just cut him out. I don't, from what I researched, the rates of like maternal exhaustion leading to a C-section were high enough for me to just say, why don't we just do that? I can start the part where my contractions get worse because I'm good with them. I know what it's like to dilate. Great. Let's just do a C-section. And they were not thrilled about that. But I told them I will sign whatever you want me to. It's my body, my choice. And she said, you are correct. It is. And so 37 weeks and 5 days, I was like, I am not feeling good. Something is off. I'm just not feeling good. So I went to my OB and they did a non-stress test and he was tachycardic. So his heart rate was past 185, which is way too fast. And basically what was happening was he was low on fluid and his cord was getting compressed, which was causing his heart to be in a little bit more stress than it needed to. And she was like, you would have had a C-section anyway. And I was like, see, plan it, you prep for it, because it was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So they sent me to the hospital to have a C-section by 5 p.m. And my mom, who was my birth partner, was not there. She was 6 hours away and 5 p.m. was like 2 hours away, I think. And I was like, well, I guess I'll really have him by myself then. And I got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back some more. And eventually I had him at 1:40 in the morning and my mom did make it.
Oh, wow.
She raced here and I was like, just be safe because, it's okay. They're all really nice. He was born at 1:40 in the morning at 37 weeks and 5 days. So.
Oh,
that's so sweet. And he's happy now?
He's so happy and healthy and thriving.
Beautiful, beautiful kiddo. Gosh, how old is he? Just turned a year, right?
Yeah, he's 14 months. Yeah.
That's wild. I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast on being a single mother by choice.
I know.
So I'm not even gonna, you're not even in the mindset realm of like more kiddos. Like you're like already focused.
No, I am en route to baby 2.
Oh my, you are incredible. That's
amazing. I will message her sometimes and just be like, I'm having such a hard time, and I think of you because like I have a hard time, and I have like a support partner that's like in it with me, and I feel like I don't know how I can do it. So the burden that you must bear every single day to keep him alive, and it's not even that like you do the bare minimum. He has this like beautiful playroom in your house, like you're always doing activities with him, and you work full time. It's wild.
Well, no, I can't even imagine, because I like, well, look, Chris will come home from work and I'm like, okay, I tap out, it's your turn, like pass it over. Like, here's Ben. Yeah. I can't even imagine not being able to have like the tap out.
Right. And it's difficult, right? But all parenthood is difficult. I just don't know any better. Yeah. So I think if you start this with a partner and like they leave, or, God forbid something happens, it would be totally different. I also think that I would be more appreciative probably of a partner, because if someone even does the bare minimum for me, I'm going to be like, hallelujah, took something off my very overflowing plate. And,
yeah.
Like you put the trash in the trash can. Amazing. How wonderful is it? Like it won't take much for me to be like, thank you. Appreciate that. But yeah, trying for another one.
Wow. Already right now?
I just had my AMH rechecked.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you're like starting.
Yeah. In the first couple of steps to try again.
Okay. So do you think that, and we'll wrap up here, and I want to hear like your feedback for women that are like, oh my gosh, cause I hear it a lot. Like, I really want to try. I want to be a single mom by choice. Women are ruling the absolute freaking world these days. My mom and I were just talking about this. Like men are urgent to find a woman because we're so like powerful and we have our shit together.
We do.
I don't even know what my question was. Oh, are you going to go the same route? Do you think you'll do CNY again?
I think so. Just because, the financial burden is still there. As well as I now have one additional mouth to feed. So, you can't really, I can't really pay $15,000 for, another one. So already cost me about $30,000. So I can't do that for a second. But
okay, well, good luck. We're super excited. Please keep us updated. Obviously, would love to be a support system where I can. And what are because I think we're running up on an hour. What are some what would you say to somebody listening to this, like saying, okay, I think I could do that?
You can. You can do it. It might be a bumpy road, but if you can just not lose sight of why you're doing it, it's going to be worth it in the end. I would do this every day. I would spend $30,000 every single day just to have Artie.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
No, I have chills. You're the best. You're amazing. You're such an incredible woman, incredible mom, incredible person. Do you have anything else you want to share with listeners? We're so thankful for you coming on and sharing your story. You're definitely our first single mother by choice.
I love to represent. I would say, for thinking about it, start sooner rather than later. The longer you wait, it does really matter for fertility purposes. So if you're thinking about it, maybe at least get the blood rolling, do the initial blood work and see where you're standing to see, can I wait? Or maybe should I start now? Do I want to freeze my eggs to at least have them frozen to maybe start something later? I would start sooner rather than later.
And I think you're the perfect example of that. You went into this thinking like, okay, going to get donor. We're going to do this. The IUI is going to work. And it was a much longer process. So thanks again, Elise. We are so happy and excited that you wanted to share your story with us.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.